Sociology. We're starting a new unit, Sociological Research, specifically focused on surveys, a type of research. We'll talk about some of the other types of research, but for the main project for this class, we're going to do a survey. So we'll go into some of the parts of survey questions, how to give out a survey, as well as what to do with the information you get back from a survey. We're going to compile the results, make graphs, make charts, and write up a report of the survey. So that's what we'll be doing with this project. I have this term sheet here. We're just going to go over the terms of the survey. There are two types of questions. Let me back up a little bit. For the survey, you're going to be, for the project, just kind of a brief overview. You're going to be giving your survey to 20 total people. So I don't care how many times you have to give out the survey to actually get 20 responses back, but you need 20 responses back. So maybe that means you give out 20 surveys and you actually get 20 back. That would be probably unlikely, but or if it means you have to give out 60 surveys and get 20 back, that's just what you have to do. So you need to receive at least, and more is fine too, but at least 20 responses back. On this survey, you will ask 7 total questions. Well, we'll get into what the actual specifics of the questions are by going over this. So there are two types of questions. There are open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Open-ended questions have an unlimited number of possible responses. So an open-ended question could be something like, what do you like best about McGinnis? And so you could, there's a literally unlimited number of things you can say to that question. Or what would you change about our country? Again, literally, and multiple people might say the same thing, but there's an unlimited number of possible answers to that question. Closed-ended, on the other hand, would be like yes, no, true, false, because all you can say is yes or no, or true or false, or A, B, C, D, E, or even a question with, by definition, a fixed number of responses. Like if there's only 5 people running for president in the primaries, and you say, who are you going to vote for? Even though that kind of sounds like an open-ended question, and there's no multiple choice or anything, it's still a closed-ended question because there's only a fixed number of names you could say. Or like, what's your favorite sport at McGinnis? Would still be a closed-ended question because there's a finite number of sports at McGinnis. So that's that. Whether it's unlimited number of possible responses or a finite fixed number of responses. And there's good and bad things about open-ended and closed-ended questions. So the pros or the good things about open-ended questions would be you can find out more information. So if you ask something like, part of the problem, and which gets into the pro of open-ended, part of the problem with closed-ended is if you say, what do you like best about McGinnis? 1, the athletics. 2, the teaching. 3, the community, or something like that. And those were your only 3 options. Then you have to choose one of those 3 options, and what a person wanted to say might have been something that wasn't even any of those 3. So you're losing information. But the pro of open-ended is you get the best. Sometimes you get the best possible response because they're able to write in their own response. The con, as you're going to find out, because you all need to have at least one open-ended question, is that it's fairly hard to gather all of that, since you're going to get 20 responses back, and these 20 people could possibly say 20 totally separate things, and then it's hard to kind of compile that into a theme. But so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Whereas if 15 people said A, 3 said B, and 2 said C, and no said D, that's easy. That's easy to conceptualize. Closed-ended is kind of the opposite of that. Pro is that it's relatively easy to make into a graph, but the con is that sometimes you can lose information, especially if it's a poorly written question. Likert scale. You're going to have 5 close-ended questions on your survey, and of those, at least one has to be Likert. Likert is on a scale of 1 to 5. So you can say, like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like McGinnis? And 1 would be, or like on a scale of McGinnis is a good school, as a statement. And then how much do you agree with this? 1 would be strongly disagree, 5 would be strongly agree, 3 would be neutral. So you'll just make a scale from 1 to 5, and you have them do strongly disagree or strongly agree. And it's easy to do it as a statement, like I believe that the Electoral College should be abolished. 1 strongly disagree, 5 strongly agree. So that works. And any kind of question you're thinking about doing as a yes, no, or true, false is almost always better done as a Likert. So for example, the Electoral College question I just asked, you could say, I believe the Electoral College should be abolished, yes or no. And that is a worse question, in my opinion, than a Likert of the exact same. So I believe the Electoral College should be abolished. And then 5 strongly agree, 1 strongly disagree. Because you could have some people that kind of want it to be, but don't really care that much. And then they'd say a 2 or in that sort of thing. Or a 3, 4, whatever. Anyway, that's Likert scale. So it's on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, but 5 is a little bit easier, or 10. But I tend to like 5. It's a nice, easy number. Demographic questions are not about your survey topic. They are about the people taking your survey. So for the surveys we do in class, often demographic questions can be like, what is your gender? What class are you in at McGinnis? But demographic questions, if the topic of your survey is politics, then your demographic question would not be about politics. It would be finding out about the people taking your survey. So it would be their gender, their age, don't ask this, but their parents' income level. That would be a demographic question. Just something finding out about like what does the sample of people I got from my survey look like? And that's demographic questions. Speaking of sample, there's sample and population. Sample is population first. Population is the entire group of people you are looking to find out the opinions of. So population is a very big number. If you're wanting to ask questions about McGinnis to McGinnis students, your population is going to be 720 or however many students we have at McGinnis. That's going to be your entire population. Your sample is just the people who actually take your survey. So in your case, your sample is going to be 20 or however many people actually give you back survey questions. And your population, if you're asking McGinnis students, is going to be the McGinnis population. If you're wanting to find out who the next president's going to be, your sample would be everyone you give a survey to, and your population would be every single American over the age of 18 that is registered to vote. So that'd be however many 100 million that is. People. So sample, the actual people that take your survey, and population, the entire group of people you are trying to figure out the opinions of. You want, the next sentence is, you want the sample to be as representative as possible of the population. And you do that by purposefully selecting the people that are going to take your survey. So if you are trying to find out who the next president is going to be, say, and just to get an obvious example, if you went to the Young Republicans Club, or you went to a politics meeting where they tend to lean more Democrat, either of those examples would be a really bad place to get your sample from because they would be skewed. Or if you're trying to find out about the opinions of McGinnis and you asked only freshmen, but you're trying to find out about the whole student body, that's also not good. So you want the sample to be a good kind of random distribution of the entire population. And you can do that in these 5 different ways. The first, which is difficult, but probably the best one, but I don't think I've ever actually had someone do this in class, would be random sampling, purely random. The only way to actually accomplish this, random means every single member of the population has an equal chance of being selected for your survey. So if you don't do this, but if you sent your survey to literally every single person, I guess that would sort of be random because every person got the survey, so everyone has an equal chance. But if you put literally every student's name into like a document, numbered it 1 to 720, and then it had some sort of a random generator pick out 20 of those names and ask those 20 people, that would be random. Every single person on the list has an equal chance to be picked. Or you had 720 names in a hat or a bowl, and you picked out 20 and you asked them, that would be random. All those are pretty inconvenient. Let's skip down to haphazard. That's the easiest one to do, and it's kind of random-ish, sort of. And that's what most people end up doing. It's kind of just picking people at your convenience. So you're kind of in between classes and you pick that person and that person, and that person and that person. And then your next hour you pick a couple in your class. And then before school you see some people in the parking lot, you pick those people. It's just kind of like picking people at your convenience without really a method, but kind of like trying to be a little bit representative. But that's the easiest one to do, and it's a decent method. It's what most people end up doing. Cluster, kind of going out of order here. Cluster would be surveying an entire pre-existing group of people. So that would be, you have Mr. Grover and you ask him, hey, can I ask your class third hour to take the survey? And he says, sure. So you ask all of his 15 people to take the survey. And then you go to Mr. Avers Stagecraft and you do the same thing. So you have all of 2 classes. That would be 2 clusters. Or you have all of Work Grant, take your survey. Cluster. The 2 left are stratified and systematic. Stratified is actually intentionally non-random on purpose. So stratified would be, you would make sure to represent demographic trends in your population. So if we have, let's say we have exactly 50% females and 50% males at McGinnis, which is probably roughly true. For random, you could accidentally end up with 13 males and 7 females. That could happen. But with stratified, you make sure that doesn't happen on purpose. So you would make sure to ask exactly 10 males and exactly 10 females. And then you'd ask exactly 5 freshmen, 5 sophomores, 5 juniors, 5 seniors. But whatever kind of distributions in the population you care about, you make sure to have them represented equally. And then systematic would be, you ask every, like what Mr. Epps says he does for football games, is he says like every 20th person that comes, every 20th student that comes into the football game gets breathalyzed. And that would be systematic. So it'd be like you either have a list of 7 or 20 people and you take every 20th person in the list, and that would be systematic. Or as people are walking in, you count to 10. Every 10th person, you say, hey, would you take my survey? Count to 10 again. Hey, would you take my survey? That would be systematic as well. Some other types of sociological research that we're not going to do, but we'll very briefly talk about, is there's called naturalistic observation. Naturalistic observation is where you just watch people. You don't interact at all. So since we already talked about Mr. Epps, we'll talk about Mr. Epps again. So during lunch, Mr. Epps just sits at a table and watches. He usually doesn't intervene. He's just watching. And if he was trying to, like on paper, write down how many times people stand up from their chairs, or how loud it gets, or anything like that, that would all be naturalistic observation. He's just observing this natural environment of lunch at McGinnis. Naturalistic observation, but with no interaction. You don't actually manipulate the environment. Then an experiment in sociological research, which would be different than psychological research. Psychological research has a much stricter kind of definition of an experiment. But an experiment in sociology, like the Stanford Prison Experiment, the Milgram Shock Experiment, is actually a situation where you would create a situation and you would actually manipulate that situation to see how people react. So a looser definition of an experiment, but you would actually do something to people and see their reaction. Like the Stanford Prison Experiment. You put people into a situation that you have created, and then you continue to act on that situation. Or the Solomon Asch line experiment. You had 2 groups of people, or the smoke-filled room experiment. Any of those experiments in psychological definition would not be a true experiment, but in sociology, that would be an experiment. So you are actually acting on a situation.